The 2021 offseason just keeps taking from us because now running back J.K. Dobbins is done for the season. He tore his ACL in the final week of the NFL preseason. For some reason, he was out there. A lot of people now want to make the case for why our starters even being out there. That's a whole other discussion. But what we know is that J.K. Dobbins is done for the 2021 season, and we have to move forward with that for Dynasty, for redraft for 2021. What is going to happen? So let's dive into that because we have some stuff that could be taken away from this. Number one, obviously for J.K. Dobbins, with him being done for the season, what does this do for his dynasty value? And to me, I don't really think it's going to be impacted all that much. I mean, first of all, ACL injuries are not complete death sentences like a lot of people have done with Cam Akers and his Achilles, with Travis Etienne and a Liz Frank surgery. ACL injuries nowadays are much more common and they're much more easier for running backs and NFL players in general to just come back from and come back to 100%. I mean, just at the running back position, Dalvin Cook returned to form after tearing his ACL in his rookie season. Nick Chubb tore his PCL back in college, not necessarily the same injury, but very similar, and had knee surgery and stuff, and obviously is fantastic now. Saquon Barkley is still a top 5 dynasty running back asset after tearing his ACL last year. So this is just a much more common injury, and ACL injuries, while they're scary in the moment and while it sucks because we're missing them for the entire year, isn't necessarily the death sentence for their entire careers down the road and shouldn't be for the dynasty value anymore. Dobbins is also currently the youngest non-rookie running back, valued between RB13 and RB24, so that entirety of the RB2s that we're valuing for dynasty. And the difference in ADP from RB13 to RB20 is only about 1 round difference. So while he might slide behind guys like Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, maybe even the 2019 running backs like Sanders, Montgomery, and Josh Jacobs, while he might slide behind them for the 2021 season because they're playing this season and he's not, ultimately that's not really a big drop in value because that's still dropping him from where he's now being valued as the RB14, 25th overall in one quarterback leagues, drops him down to still being within a top 40 overall dynasty asset, and that's not a major drop in his dynasty value. Not to mention, if people are looking forward to 2022 already, we're talking about a 23-year-old J.K. Dobbins coming off an ACL injury and still a very fantastic Baltimore Ravens offense with a lot of hope for his future breakout as well, versus other guys like a 27-year-old Austin Eckler, a 26-year-old Joe Mixon. You know, the 2019 class is another year older. What happens with Miles Sanders? Did he take over the job? Did he not? Did Josh Jacobs lose out to Kenyon Drake? Did David Montgomery not get the workload that we were assuming that we saw at the end of 2020? There's a lot of question marks with all of that. So at the end of the day, it might even be possible that J.K. Dobbins really doesn't move all that much within the actual running backs themselves and is still a very valuable dynasty asset for the remainder of 2021 heading into 2022. Of course, the biggest beneficiary of J.K. Dobbins missing the season is Gus Edwards for 2021. However, the initial valuation and where people have been ranking Edwards for this year seems really off to me because they don't have him inside the top 24, or if they do, he's a very fringe RB24, RB25 running back for 2021. And that doesn't feel right because a lot of people have been saying he's much closer to Damian Harris than he is Josh Jacobs or James Robinson or other guys in that kind of RB20 range versus down in like the RB26 to RB30 range. That doesn't feel right to me. And some of that may stem from the idea that there's an expectation that the Ravens are going to add a running back to this backfield, a free agent like Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson, Le'Veon Bell, other guys like that to this running back room. However, the Baltimore Ravens have already come out and stated that they're very happy with where their room is as of right now. And Gus Edwards is a big part of that and the big reason why they feel comfortable with their room. And that was also another reason why they extended him back in June. And it's also not to say that we haven't seen Gus Edwards perform for fantasy. We have. Actually, last year, after the Ravens bye week in 10 games, Edwards had 8 weeks as a top 36 running back, and 4 of those weeks being top 24, with a couple of them being top 20. He was averaging 10 carries, about 50 rushing yards, 1 target per game, all that while playing on sub 40% of the snaps. So while he was good in a part-time role last year, sharing it with J.K. Dobbins, we have also seen Gus Edwards in a more full-time workload without Mark Ingram, with Lamar Jackson at the quarterback position. If you go all the way back to 2018, when Lamar Jackson took over as the full-time starter for the Baltimore Ravens in week 11, Gus Edwards from week 11 on averaged 17 carries and 93 rushing yards per game, while only scoring 2 total touchdowns in that 7-game stretch. And actually in that stretch, Edwards was the RB18 overall, but while only scoring 2 total touchdowns on 122 rush attempts. Now on that 122 rush attempts, we could expect an average touchdown rate to be a lot closer to scoring 5, maybe 6 total touchdowns. Gus Edwards only scored 2, but if he had scored 5, just scored 3 more in that stretch, that would have made Gus Edwards the RB10 overall to close out the 2018 season. And that is also with Gus Edwards only catching 1 total reception, 1 reception in 7 games to end the 2018 season. And while I'm not expecting Gus Edwards to be some like crazy 40 reception type running back or anything more than what Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry are getting, but I would expect him to receive, you know, a pretty decent amount of receptions and targets to come his way and be up closer to maybe the 20-25 total range in receptions at the end of the year. Because I mean, back in 2019, we had a 30-year-old Mark Ingram pull in 26 receptions for 250 yards and a handful of touchdowns on top of what he already had in 1,000 rushing yards and 10 total rushing touchdowns in the 2019 season, finishing as the RB11. And that was with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill combining for almost 200 carries themselves. So even Gus Edwards wasn't really the full workhorse in this 2019 Baltimore Ravens offense. And I think that is a workload that we could very much expect from Gus Edwards in 2021. So I really wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season, we're looking at Gus Edwards as having 200 to 225 total carries, maybe around 20-25 receptions, 12 to 1,300 total yards, and near double-digit touchdowns, which would make him very valuable for fantasy as a solid RB2. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, this is still a very good run-first Baltimore Ravens offense that has been very efficient offensively, both passing and rushing. And Gus Edwards is now their lead running back for this team in 2021. So naturally, we should want him for fantasy football. If you'd like to watch a really cool video on redrafting the 2020 rookie class, you can click right up here and find that there. And with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and we will catch y'all later.